Hi everybody! We wanted to create a video for you walking through the main riff, the piano riff in Nightswimming, which was the song we've been listening to this week for the Sunday Record It, and talking about in class and on Discord. So hopefully by now, if you are interested in this song, you've caught Tony put up a video kind of summarizing some of what we did in class for the first part of the week. And then we also did our official Sunday Record It video yesterday where we kind of walk through the bigger picture in terms of the chord structure. So this is kind of a bonus video this week on this piano riff. We do have standard notation that will be included as part of your packet, but I wanted to talk through how to play it, both for those of you that perhaps are still learning to read standard notation, or if you can read it, but you're kind of newer to Popmatics in our learning by listening approach. I wanted to also kind of just walk through how I try to think about when I'm reading a piece of music, now that I have more of a theory context in this learning by listening experience, like how I translate that to sheet music. And again, one of the reasons for giving you this sheet music, we think everyone should learn to read sheet music and everyone should learn to play by ear. It's not this kind of back and forth the way a lot of people think it is, one or the other. And one of the values in sheet music is in a case like this, where this riff is somewhat complicated. If you're new to learning by listening, you're going to have trouble picking out individual notes. We know even picking out the bass line can be a challenge, so to get all of these notes. So this is, what sheet music is designed for. We can help you see what this was in case you really wanted to learn this piano part and kind of get a better sense of what's going on and play it close to what they played in the recording. I will also say this is not a note-by-note transcription, but it's pretty close, especially in the right hand. We did also, though, try to keep it manageable, so the left hand is a little bit simplified, but it also, kind of behind this is, for us, some of the joy is in making it your own a little bit. You can still do that and have it sound very much like the song. So you can customize it to your level. You can level it up or down, and I'll talk about how to do that. So for us, that's a little more important than just like, let's make sure we all play it exactly like he did on the recording. I doubt that he always played it exactly the same either, because it's hard to play musically when you're just trying to follow instructions. Now, obviously, it can be done. We do it in classical music all the time, but in pop music, we have a different focus of kind of, and obviously in classical music, not obviously, but in classical music, that used to be much more of a focus too than it is today. Everyone could improvise. All right, enough talking. Let's get into it. So you'll probably remember this song starts with a 2-bar intro, which you won't see here, but you could really play that however you wanted. Sort of similar to the first part where you've got that G walking up to a G over B to a C, and then the same thing, G. I'm just doing this to give you the context. Remember? So again, that intro, it's G to the G over B to the C. Then we kind of like start again, but this time instead of the C, we go to the D. And that's in part of the chord chart that we've given you. So just to set the stage, you've got that, and then we're going to get right into this riff that we've notated. So I'm going to walk you through this in phrases, which will mean kind of 2 bars at a time. So like I said, we have 6 bars total, and we notice that's kind of an unusual structure. But we've got, and those 6 bars just loop. So one verse I think has 4 loops of this, and then it will kind of every now and then go back to that interlude, and then back to the 6-bar loop pattern. So at the beginning here, we've got octave Gs in the left hand, and our right hand is just going to walk up the chord. So here's the chord with the G in the middle, this position here. Simple. So we're staying completely in the chord. And then here, which happens a little bit off the beat, this is where that G over B comes in, because all of a sudden I'm putting in my third of the chord in the root, which is a very common. So 1 to the 1 over 3 to the 4. Okay. So those are the kind of things I would notice in the left hand. I would notice my right hand is staying on the G, but my top of my left hand is staying on the G, whereas my bottom note, I'm not used to playing and talking quite this much, goes up to the B right here. So this G stays on top, and in fact it stays all the way over there, but our left hand goes from the G to the B, which is our 3 to our C. So it's carrying those bass notes, the B and the C. 2 and 3 and 1. All right, and then just to round it out a little bit. The G is part of each one of those chords, so it sounds really nice to keep it on top. 2 and 3. That's our left hand. And then there's only one more part of that left hand, which is we then walk up to the shell of our D chord. So the C and G here, it's like the shell of our, let's just clear this off for a minute. This is the shell of our C chord in the left hand, C and G, and then we've got the shell, or the root and 5 of our D chord. Okay? So that's what we've got in the left hand. Let's see how the right hand plays along now. I already showed you. We start out with that, and then here, this is where we pointed out we've got a lot of this sort of Area 51 going on, the 5 and the 1. So, and in this case, that 5 is part of our G chord. So we're still, again, once entirely on our chord here. So in fact, I think this whole first measure, we're just kind of playing around with chord tones. 3 and 4 and. Okay, I'm going to play that one more time for those of you that are trying to play along. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then we move really pretty here. What happens is that D stays on the top, but we're hearing that C chord come in with the left hand. And again, Area 51 on the top or the bottom of the right hand. So you can just think of this. This is one thing when if you're newer to reading sheet music, you don't want to look note for note every single place. You want to see how notes are changing and what patterns you have. All right, I had to fix a blurry camera there. Okay, so reading patterns is just as helpful or more helpful than like reading every single note every single time you see it. So that's how I know here in the left hand, you know, once I recognize what that is, I can see that I'm just walking each one of those up. And I can also look, where's this D? Once I know that D, I want to notice it's carrying all the way through the lower part of my right hand. So I don't have to read that again each time. Another thing I can do, I'm going to go back for a minute and let's now focus on that top line. You really want to be able to hear and sing both the bass line and the top line. And then again, play them without looking once you've learned it. So we've got bum 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 ba da da na 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 na. So we're kind of walking up the chord and again staying on the chord. But now once I get to the second measure, walking down and taking these steps and repeats and just one little skip here. All right, so there's a lot of different ways you can think about this, but that's how that sounds. I want to always be kind of hearing that melody. And then notice, let's go right here, because I think this is about where I left off. Back to hands together. I've still got the Area 51 in the right hand, along with the C and the G in the left hand, and that nice D melody note on top. Walk down, hit the D again and walk down. And then I shift my left hand up to continue this pattern in the right hand. Okay, and again, you do not have to play it exactly like this. When I personally play it, I tend to put a little more rhythm into it. You could also play just the bass, simpler version. However feels comfortable to you. You can also play it start simple. Really make sure you've got that melody tight and that bass line tight, and then you can fill in some of these details. Once more, just as written. And really, most of these rhythms, as you can see, are pretty aligned in terms of left to right hand. The only thing to watch out for is that you're hitting this one here. You can tell by these dots and this tie that this one is happening on an and of a beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, let's move on to the next line. The first thing I want to point out here in the second line, another thing you always want to do when reading music and listening is patterns. We talk about this a lot in class. So if I start to look at this, I'm going to gonna notice, or if I start to, play, oops, bum, bum, that's all the same. If you were just reading this and not really kind of trying to dissect it, you might not notice it, or your ear might pick it up if you were thinking about it, but you can easily confirm it by looking that we've got the same thing we had going on up here, and it's only right here on this. Oops, I got the wrong color. A. This is where it changes. So this is where, as we kind of noted in class, this four chord pattern that we start out with then gets a couple of chords kind of inserted into it the second pass through, and this begins with this A add 9. So if I start back on the C, the first part of this measure, I've got, and then what we've got here for this A chord, we've got the root written in octaves. We've got that C sharp in the right hand with the B on the top. And we just walk down again, similar to last time. Up above, when we were up here, we had bum, bum. The melody changed slightly to sound with, to match the chord. Bum, 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 bum. So you notice that one had this chord note and this chord note in it. Here we've added in this G. To really almost give this, that's our 7th and our 9th. So we're really this is our chord out of the key. The only one that we have in this song. It gives it that kind of quality where you can, if you're listening without the music, this is where you might have noticed something different happening. And if you are looking at the music, there's always a dead giveaway, which is the fact that we have an accidental here. Now there are other sharps. We've got F sharp over here because that's part of our landscape. Our landscape is the key of G. So every time that we've got an F in there, we're assuming it's sharp. But this is the first place that we have had to add an accidental wasn't an F sharp. So that clues us in that this is going out of the key. And it's the only chord that does. So let me play the second line for you. Nice and slow. 2 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I really want to go on because that just makes me pull to the next line, but I'm going to pause for 1 minute and say one more thing about this A. We also talked about in class how another way to approach this one is to take, right now we've got the C sharp, which also you guys might notice it's our middle key in this key. It's the note halfway between If I Ride the Wave. It's the exact middle of this landscape. And middle key is also always what comes into play when we change our 2, which is normally minor, to major. It brings in middle key. So we see this a lot, but what's kind of fun about middle key is that it can also make a nice pattern in the bass because it's right between the 4 and the 5. So in this case, I can also use it in the bass instead of the A. And that's what we saw in Here Comes the Sun. Something really similar. It was in a different key, but similar idea. And I love that kind of, if you're going between 4 and 5, it works nicely. In this case, as you'll see, we're actually going to go back to 4, but it works for that too. So your choice of an alternate way to play the bass for that add 9. So now let's move on to the final line here. So we were at the A, and as I said, we might have played it this way, but then we don't go straight to our 5 chord. A lot of times the 2 major will go to the 5, the same way we have minor 2, 5, 1. So you might be expecting that, but in this case we take a little detour back to the 4 and then to the 5, which is a sus in this case. All right, so the way that sounds, that's my A add 9. Here I am now on this C on the final line of music here. And this part is pretty simple to play. We've just got that C shell again in the left hand, C and G. By shell I mean root 5. A simple melody there, 1 one line, or one note rather, and then move up to the D. Bum, 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 bum. So let me play those last two bars for you one more time, starting on the C. So we've got C and G, and a G in the right hand. Bum, 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 bum. Moving up to our D. Da, 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 da. And then we're gonna start back at the beginning. All right. So I'll play the whole thing through for you once, just exactly as written, so you can hear it nice and slow. But before I do, just to point out in these last two bars, so you can see how this is the first bar, the C. You can see how that one we're really sticking with mostly our chord notes, plus we've just added in that little 6 as the passing tone. We've got more notes this time. We've got all of our, notes surrounding our D chord, which are really like our sus notes, right? And that's why this one is written as D sus4, because that G is such a prominent part of this melody. It's... And then at the end it resolves, you kind of land on that F sharp. Bum, 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 bum. So we're kind of going around the sus and then ending it a little more resolved. And then we're going to again go, that 5 wants to take us back to our 1. So let's just hear it once straight through, nice and slow. And see if you can follow along with the music. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Repeat. All right, and then start over. So that's it. I hope you guys have a lot of fun playing this. It's really beautiful. It is harder to sing along with it, so that's going to take extra practice if you're trying to do that, or maybe you have someone else to sing it with you, or just have fun playing the riff. It's beautiful by itself too. So any questions, just let us know, and we'll see you soon. Bye.